Here. Wanted to talk a little bit today. We're going to do a shorter deep dive into one of these decks looking at beating Jango Fett. The highlight deck here today is going to be Gar Saxon Yellow. Why this is less of a deep dive, we'll talk about in just a moment, but this is going to be our little highlight. So in this video, we're going to talk about why Gar Saxon. We're going to talk about some of the key cards, the play pattern that Gar Saxon likes to use. I will give you an example deck. We'll do a little discussion of the sideboard. We'll talk about facing the meta, and that'll wrap it up for today. Before we get going, if you would, please hit subscribe down here. Our channel is at nearly 500 subscribers already and would like to see it continue growing and would love for you to be a part of it. Without any further ado, why Gar Saxon? Gar Saxon versus the meta. Looked at a pretty fair amount of data for this one and pulled some stuff off of SWDB and off of the database provided by Ian, who puts together a really great spreadsheet there that's a companion to it. Gar Saxon has a positive win rate into Jango and who is greater than 20% of the current meta. But he also has a positive win rate into Sabine and to Boba and to Admiral Piet. He's an even into Anakin and Han. His struggles are kind of similar as far as Quinlan. Cad Bane, Bosk, Palpatine all fit a same mold. They're all control decks and are hard control decks, which are what he'll struggle with. We'll talk about that a little bit more down the line. If Jango is removed, Quinlan is the current second highest played, though I think that Han will probably supplant some of that. But the trick is that with Jango still being the highest played and this being Tuesday before they release anything on Wednesday, we have to play as though Jango is a part of our meta. Why this is a little bit shorter deep dive is that the critical mass of shielded units is really what you need to make to make Gar Saxon shine against Jango. And in doing so, we really only have a couple of options. There's one and exactly one shielded unit outside of blue and yellow, and that is Rook from the original Spark of Rebellion set, and he's in green. And so that really isn't a great color option for us because we want enough units that come in already equipped with an upgrade so that we can make Gar Saxon's ability work. Yellow gives us the best secondary access to that. It also gives us several tempo plays that are going to give this deck some much needed reach. As for our leader himself, Gar Saxon is a vigilance villainy leader. As I said, we partnered him with Cunning as his second aspect in this deck. He is a passive ability, but a static passive ability. Any upgraded units get a +1/+0. That's not per upgrade, it's just as long as they are upgraded. He deploys at 6 resources. He's a nice body at that size with a 4/7. The static ability remains in place. However, any units that are defeated, you may return an upgrade from that defeated unit to its owner's hand. Now, keep in mind that does not mean token upgrades. Token upgrades are always destroyed when they are defeated. But that would mean other things that are in our deck are capable of coming back to our hand if they are on another unit while Gar Saxon is on his unit's side. Let's talk about some of the key cards here. As we said, we're going with yellow and blue because that gives us the best variety of shielded units and still gives us good access to tempo play. Shielded units are difficult for Jango to exhaust, and before he has the opportunity to put a second ping into them, they gain +1/+0 while they're shielded. That means that Crafty Smuggler, Director Krennic, and Iden Verso are really great in this deck, with Director Krennic kind of pulling double duty. He lowers the cost of some of our when defeated, and we're going to exploit that a little bit in here too. Lom Pike is a fantastic part of this deck, especially against things that are either playing in space where you are not as heavy, or are playing things like Triple Dark Raid, because I do not mind putting a shield on something that is going to defeat itself or bounce to hand at the end of the turn. And that shields one of my units, makes it harder to remove, and gives me +1/+0. Lompike is a great thing in this deck. Snapshot Reflexes. This is an effective 2/1 buff that does not lose tempo. I can play this from my hand on a ready unit, attack with that unit right now. It gains +1/+1 from the upgrade itself, and then another +1 as long as it's the first upgrade from Gar Saxon. The Hotshot Blaster also does this, but it lets me do it with reach because it lets me smuggle it. So Lompike and Hotshot Blaster are going to be able to come in from the row. Hotshot Blaster, you're almost exclusively going to do that because it's out of aspect for us otherwise. So we're not giving up tempo in order to slap an upgrade on something and attack bigger. We are primarily a ground presence, and you'll see that when we look at the deck. The play pattern of this loves to play Director Krennic on turn 1. We can play our Crafty Smuggler on turn 1. We can play Greedo on turn 1. We can play Zygerian Starhopper, Inferno 4. We've got a lot of options for what we can put down. Director Krennic is the superior option because he enables me to play Greedo for free, or he enables me to do something like play Inferno 4 and Zygerian Starhopper on turn 2. Because Director Krennic is giving me that discount, that resource cheat for the first unit that I play with a when defeated effect. He is also shielded, which means that he comes in effectively as a 3/2, but something that Jango cannot immediately ping and get rid of that attack. So he's usually able to get in a swing and to put down another unit below rate. So he is our preferred turn 1 play. That works best against Jango. It still works well against some of the other ping decks like Cad Bane or against Quinlan Voss, but that's our preferred turn 1. We're a tempo player after that. We have the potential to get card advantage because of the ability that we have to play some of the things from our row. But the tempo plays that we get, especially the ones that provide an upgrade, are going to allow us to continue to press, and we do want to press a lot of that damage towards base. Our mid game allows units like the Super Commando Squad, which I've shown here, which comes in shielded, so it's effectively a 5/4 with a shield for the first thing that attacks into it, and the first thing has to attack into it because it is a Sentinel as long as it is upgraded. Flipping Gar Saxon will provide me, as we said, with a 4/7 unit and the potential to return any of our played upgrades to hand if those units are defeated. And closing out the game usually involves cards like the Hotshot DL44 Blaster or Surprise Strike. This is the deck that went to the top 8 in Liverpool. Tristan Gauntley, you see credited there, played this deck very well and played it into a pretty open field. This went into that final group of 8. I think finishing 6th. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't write that one down prior. Some of the tech that we talked about is in here. You see Director Krennic is a 3 of. You see that Greedo is a 3 of. Greedo can be played for free if you pattern yourself correctly. You could drop Greedo you could drop Director Krennic and then Greedo on turn 1, especially into a deck that is not using pings, and so can't get rid of Greedo as cleanly. Inferno 4, you can play after Krennic for 1. Zygerian Starhopper, you can play after Krennic for 1. But you have a good variety of turn 1 plays. That is 13 of them, so it's unlikely to just whiff on turn 1. You see some tempo plays here. The Snapshot Reflex is a 3 of. The DL44 Blaster is a 3 of. Asteroid Sanctuary and No Good to Me Dead both work very well in this. Asteroid Sanctuary is a fantastic way to deal with something that came in off of Triple Dark Raid or Sneak Attack, because it not only exhausts that unit for 2 resources, but it also grants one of your units a shield. So remember that in this deck, if they have pinged off that shield, that's perfectly fine. That doesn't necessarily defeat the unit, but I can grant that shield back and exhaust one of your units at the same time with Asteroid Sanctuary, making this a wonderful tempo play in this deck. No Good to Me Dead for a more durable unit, but that gives us 6 very cheap 2-cost ways to exhaust a unit and kind of get some trouble out of my path. Surprise Strike is a nice buff. Jetpack is a good card from the row that is not only going to give me a +3 if it's the first upgrade on something, but it's going to give me a shield that turn as well. Spark of Rebellion Boba Fett is a nice, clean answer to a lot of things on the ground. Keep in mind that if something has attacked or has been exhausted through other means, as long as it did not come into play this turn, he gets an on-attack ability into it first. And so he can exhaust something and then turn around and deal the 3 on attack damage prior to dealing his 3 damage. So Boba Fett is a nice answer to a lot of things on the ground and is going to be kind of your cleanup crew. You see Outer Rim Outlaws and 7th Fleet Defender. Both of these are here with shields. Toro Calican allows you to do damage to a unit, one of your units, and ready itself. So he is a way to kind of get around some of the later tap down effects if you are missing some of your shields. Iden Verso is here both as a pilot where she upgrades at a 3/3, but she is also a shielded unit played herself. She'll put a shield on whatever it is that she pilots. Now, notice there's only 3 ships in this deck. And so you're probably not slapping her down as a pilot on something. You're probably putting her on the ground where she effectively is a 5/3 until that shield is removed. We talked about Lom Pike a little bit already. He is a real workhorse in here, being able to go out, smuggle out or come out at 4. Either one is perfectly acceptable. And when he swings, he is going to slap a shield on one of your opponent's units, usually in space, because clearly you don't care about that arena as much as they do. And he'll be able, with that attack, to grant either himself or grant another of your units a shield. And if it's a unit that is not currently upgraded, it gains +1 by getting that shield. Your shuttle is here because it allows you to move around token upgrades. This can be extremely useful. It comes in shielded, and so you can play it and remove its shield to put it to a ground unit that your opponent is trying to eliminate. And so it also plays well with Krennic because it comes in for 3. As you can see, this deck plays low to the ground because we topped out at 5 resources here for our plays on a 6 resource leader. So nothing in our deck screams big. We're playing low, and we are using the shields on our units to give them a +1 buff and to keep them from being stymied by our opponents, especially Jango, trying to stop them from attacking. Our sideboard here in this deck had 2 of Confiscate, had 2 of Covert Strength. Covert Strength allowing me to heal a unit and put an experience token on it. You had a little bit of Hand Hate in Bazine. You had a little bit of a Cad Bane answer with the Lurking Tie Phantom. And then Commandeer and Change of Heart both answer a unit. Commandeer we know well about. If you're looking at a unit that is a unpiloted vehicle 6 or less, I get to take it and ready it and then return it to their hand. And then Change of Heart does something similar. I get to take control of a unit for a turn and then bounce it to hand at the end. As we said, this is a very low to the ground deck. You are playing fast, and so even though you are playing blue-yellow, you are the aggressor in most cases. Your plays that are tempo plays are usually to allow you to attack with something right now or to exhaust one of your opponent's units, and in the case of Asteroid Sanctuary, also buff one of yours. This is a deck that made a sectional top 8. And so this is a well-proven and very well-built deck by the author there, Tristan Gauntly. Sideboard discussion. This deck is well tuned for Jango in the main form. And until something changes, which we expect might happen on Wednesday, that's the meta that we're in. Quinlan and Cad Bane give this a little bit more trouble, not because they are any kind of better at removing your units, but because their units are typically not hit and hide. Jango likes to use things like triple dark raid. He likes to keep his own board small, but keep reaching into his deck to get things out for a big punch. Where Quinlan and Cad Bane are going to play units that are durable, and then once your shield is removed, a lot of your units, as we saw, are low HP. So take a look through here. Toro Calican and Boba Fett are both 3/5, which is the nice hallmark there for a 3 cost. But take a look at your other 3 costs that are here. Outer Rim Outlaws, a 3/3. 7th Fleet Defender, a 3/2. Look at your 4s that are here. You've got 3 health on Iden Verso. She's shielded, great, but you got 4/6 on Lom Pike, and so we see Iden's stats as being well below some of the rate if it weren't for the fact that she comes in shielded. So that said, a lot of the problem that you'll encounter with Cad Bane and with Quinlan comes not from the fact that they remove the shield, but the fact that their units are by and large going to be able to trade effectively into yours once that ping happens. So also suffers against some hard removal, and we saw that in the numbers when you talk about like Bosk or Palpatine or Cad Bane Blue, because hard removal doesn't care whether you're shielded or not. Hard removal just says defeat the unit. So red removal doesn't work as well because red removal is typically damage based. Now that also means that this deck does not have some of the same problems that others do against Boba Yellow, because Boba Yellow is going to be doing indirect damage under your shield and not really care what's going on. You don't really care what's going on because your unit's still shielded and still swinging big. So, upgrade hate doesn't really concern us. We didn't play an upgrade, and so we're not as concerned with them removing a shield from something via one of their cards. They 0 for 1 themselves if they play a card to remove a shield, and I'm perfectly okay with that. You could consider a bigger removal package. You can consider something like Rivals Fall or No Glory Only Results, which would target specific removal. You could consider other exhaust effects like Electromagnetic Pulse, which I have shown here. Additional upgrade spots if you wanted to add one. I prefer something like Brutal Traditions because it allows me to recur it. And so if, let's say, Quinlan Voss and Hand Disruption became a bigger thing in the absence of, or just in, as we kind of grow and figure out Jango a little bit better. Brutal Traditions, all right, great. Well, I put it in my discard pile. And later on, I defeated a unit, so I played it from my discard pile without any kind of penalty. And that allows me to bring back a +2 health upgrade that's effectively a +2/+2 to something from my discard pile and recur it later in the game anytime I defeat a unit. We have a narrow top end in this deck, and there's other versions of it out there. I showed you the one, as I said, that finished in a top 8 at a sectional. This one did not go to Snoke or Avenger, but they can. I like Count Dooku in this deck at times because Count Dooku comes in with a removal attached to him and shielded, and so he's a big body that removes something immediately and has a shield. He's only got 4 health, and that was what we talked about with some of the rest of this, but he does have the shield, and he does have some removal attached to him. Cad Bane is also a thought here, being able to capture 3 of your opponent's units at once. But with Cad Bane, I also think about using Dryden Voss, even as a 1 or 2 of in my sideboard, because Dryden Voss would come in with that shield and is effectively a 6/7. Could turn any unit that Cad Bane has. I would stay light on additional upgrades and lean towards other shielded units or things that grant experience tokens. Another version of this deck that did well in Spain used the advanced TIE fighter. And so it was able to grant a couple of experience tokens to units that were on the field. And you could lean into something like having Lurking TIE Phantom, especially if you are shutting off a Cad Bane, and then pop a couple experience on it because that deck, Cad Bane's deck, is pretty light in space. The Client is another effective unit in here because he is shielded when he comes out. He's got a nice body at 5 hit points on him, and he allows you some reach because if you need to trade into units, he can slap a bounty on one of them and then go hunting to wind up giving you some healing. Facing the meta. We talked about this a little bit, so I'm going to go over it quickly. Jango Fett, our shielded units allow us to keep pressing the attack, and that is something that Jango is predicated on stopping. Jango wants to action condense you, and he wants to make you have to play something or take initiative because you can't swing with something. And not having that, he's a 25-point base in most cases. You could consider bringing in Commandeer. And I would remove a ping target like Greedo since a lot of his pings are targeted. And Greedo with 1 health is just a easy thing to remove. You could bring in Change of Heart. You can steal the War Juggernaut. You can steal the Devastator. Lon Pike is the true all-star in this, as I said in the major discussion of the deck. You can slap a shield on something that came in TDR. If you can, if you have Lon Pike on the table and Jango triple Dark Raids, and you can use Asteroid Sanctuary and then put a shield on that thing that he then has to remove from the game, Jango's just sad because his triple Dark Raid went searching and great. He might wind up getting something back, but he burned 3 resources for something that he got to ping a shield off with, and then you put the shield back and exhausted the thing that's going to go to his hand. Quinlan Voss, remember your breakpoints for hand disruption. Unfortunately, Quinlan can hand disrupt us a long, long way into his game. But just know that as far as your breakpoints for hand disruption go, the first couple of turns, he's usually looking for your events. And then after you get down 4 resources, he can put down a Ahsoka Tano and remove, if you still have it, remove something from your hand that is a unit and exhaust your units. It's the matchup with the lowest win rate right now, and this is not a problem that I have gone out of my way to solve yet because of the way that the meta is currently shaped. Han Solo is a true 50-50. Our shields will allow for a more favorable trade, even though he is going to be able to resource cheat and be up in size from us. Our strategy should be pressing damage and making Han make the trades. Because if he has to bounce off of one of our shielded units a couple of times, then that's to our advantage. We're favored into Sabine. She likes to push damage. We like to push damage. She is exclusively on ECL, and that's perfectly fine. If we are able to put a hotshot blaster on one of our early game units, we have enough power to take Sabine out with a crafty smuggler. And so, that's a sad place for Sabine to be. We also have Surprise Strike that could do that if one of our units still has a shield. We can force Wrecker to pop his big hit on a Super Commando squad. And it really makes him much less impactful. Sabine is a very favorable matchup for us. Overall, the weakness of this deck is hard removal. Cad Bane Blue is problematic. Palpatine is problematic. Quinlan has been problematic just because of the amount that he can clear off of the field. Our upgrades are our advantage points in the deck. They prevent exhaustion. They add damage. They allow us to reach even though we are low to the ground. So, as we said, a little bit more brief than some of the rest, but that is the dive into Cad Bane Yellow. Or sorry, not Cad Bane, into Gar Saxon Yellow. Trying to Cad Bane's name right here at the bottom, giving me fits. That is our look into Gar Saxon Yellow. We will be back later this week with a deeper look at Han and a shot at Bosk. We may take a crack at Quinlan Voss as well, but that's where we are for right now. Stay tuned as FFG updates us on the state of the game on the 9th, and we will see you guys next time.